Good morning, INTERWEB. Welcome back to Mapping March. This is the third installment of my How to Create a Atlas Map series. Now, I've done a bit of work off screen. I've changed my currents from this is how they used to look, to this. Now, the reason being that I was originally going to put like a submerged continent type thing here that was big enough to disrupt this sort of circumglobal current, but in an effort to save time, I am not going to do that. So given that there won't be a massive amount of continental shelf happening here, I'm just going to say that this current runs all the way around the globe. And also just a very quick recap on the mechanics from the last video. You can draw landforms by selecting a color, going N on your keyboard, drawing in various shapes until you are happy with what you've drawn. Hit V to select the shape. Go to select, same, fill color, that selects your entire landmass there, and then hit unite. If you want to subtract something from that shape, draw in the bit that you want to subtract, select both shapes, and then either go minus front, or hit Shift M, and whilst holding Alt, drag through the bits you want to delete. If you're drawing a coastline and you lift up your stylus by accident, hit A to select the wonky shape, hit N again for your pencil tool, and then simply draw a big arc from start to finish, and Illustrator will do the rest and finish off your coastline for you. Now, something I should have talked about in the last video but didn't is layer management. So let's say you're going to draw another elevation on top of this, something like that, and you want to move this layer below this layer. You can do it manually by simply dragging your layer down to where you want to put it, or you can use a hotkey, which I would highly advise. Command left square bracket moves it down one, Command left square bracket moves it up one, or if you include shift in those shortcuts, you can move the layer all the way to the bottom or all the way to the top. So if I go Command Shift left square bracket, that moves that layer all the way to the bottom of everything, and Command Shift right square bracket moves that layer all the way up to the top. A useful set of shortcuts to know. So anyways, without further ado, I'm going to go into a bit of a time lapse and start working some more on my landforms. Alright, so let's review some comments from the previous video. To start on a sort of general note, a lot of people left comments criticizing the look of my coastlines and my mountain ranges, etc., stating that they weren't very realistic. I agree in part with those sentiments. Like, I do struggle with coastlines, getting that balance between smooth sections and jagged sections. Same idea with mountain ranges. But this is not a thing that I'm overly pushed about in this series, because this isn't a demonstration on how to create the most realistic coastlines or landforms ever. This is a demonstration on how to create an atlas using Illustrator. So it's more about me showing you how I use these tools as opposed to the scientific rigor of the art I'm creating. It's more about the art, and it's more about using the tools. And this is going to become super pronounced later on when I tackle rivers. I guarantee you, because I'm not going to be focusing too much on realism, that some of my rivers are going to be crazy. But again, it's about using the tool, like how to show rivers in an atlas as opposed to how to create the perfect river. Adam Guthrie writes, when adding the elevation levels, how do you make sure you don't cover up your lakes? So as you can hopefully see on screen, I don't care about covering up the lakes. I'm going to bring those back at the end, and the basic way of doing this is once all the land is done, I'm going to release the mask I had on the sea level layer, then group everything but the mask together, bring the mask up to the top of the stack, and subtract it from the group. Dark Lord Oren writes, I think the question with using G-plates to draw on a sphere comes up because some versions of Illustrator already have that. And for the ones that don't, you can download free scripts and plugins to do it. So I wasn't aware that you could draw on a sphere in Illustrator. That's not a thing I have ever done. If that's a thing you guys want to explore, feel free to do so. It would save the need to use G-plates. But honestly, using G-plates isn't that much of a hassle. Like, it's a free program. You need to know 1 or 2 shortcuts to do the thing. It's not that big a deal, I don't think. And again, I'm showcasing my workflow, like how I go about doing this. It's not the most optimal version ever, but it's the version I use. If my workflow gets refined over time or changes in any significant way, I may run another Atlas mapping series. Like, for example, one based on QGIS. Marcus Sebastian Rodriguez Peluso writes, you are obviously drawing like the continents are flat. I mean, take the final map and load it into G-plates and I'm sure that some coastlines or rivers will look weird, especially close to the poles. For sure, and what I would usually do, although I may not do it for the sake of time in this series, I would complete a map and then bounce it back and forth between G-plates and Illustrator to refine things and to minimize the distortions. C. Gonzalez writes, I've used G-plates to create topography in the past by creating new features, filling the polygons and making them different colours. Yeah, so I've thought about actually doing the entire thing in G-plates, but that's even more time consuming than Illustrator, but it's definitely the most kind of accurate way to go and the best way to avoid distortions. Just do as much as humanly possible on a globe. Lucas Garrecht writes, what computer setup do you have to draw in Illustrator with a stylus like that? So I have a mid-2015 MacBook Pro running macOS Mojave, a 2.8 GHz Intel Core i7 processor, 16 gigs of RAM, 1 TB storage, and integrated graphics. And the drawing tablet I'm using is a Wacom, I think it's called Wacom Intuos Draw or something like that. It's the cheapest drawing tablet I could find of theirs. It cost me €80. Quote Pilgrim writes, I would absolutely recommend using Blender to draw on a 3D sphere if you don't already know how to use Blender. It's never a bad idea to learn how to use a new program. You know what? I agree. I take back what I said in the last video. And in many ways I'm running this tutorial using Illustrator because Illustrator is kind of a good tool to know how to use, even outside of mapping. Okay, so those are the elevations blocked in for our equatorial landmass and our temperate landmass, to a certain extent. I'll probably finesse these a little bit more later on. Next up, I'm going to block in my polar landmass. Now to do this, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this layer Topo C. I'm going to drag this down below all the layers. Hit I on my keyboard, select my deepest C depth. Hit M to bring up the rectangle tool, click anywhere on the canvas I want. Put in the exact dimensions of the artboard, in this case again 14,000 by 7,000 pixels, hit OK, make sure Align to Artboard is selected up here, horizontally align, vertically align, and then lock. to make sure we don't disturb it. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is so the white color for ice caps will show up. So, question is, how do we show elevation when we only have one color to select from? Because our northern continent up here is going to be predominantly covered in ice, so we're going to use the ice color. To do this, select your ice cap color. In my case, it's pure white. Let me zoom in a little bit just to do a little tester. Hit N on your keyboard to bring up the pencil tool, and again you draw in an outline of your coast. Hit V to select the shape you've just made. Bring the stroke panel to the front here, double click it, and then select some sort of blue color. Some sort of bright blue color. Again, this is following the style guide of my reference atlas. Hit OK, go up to the stroke option here and click dashed line. And import these figures. If you're using the same dimensions, you can play around with this a little bit. Make your cap round and make your corners round. And the idea here is that if we zoom in, we want to create a dotted line of some description. So if we zoom back out, this allows us then, when we go to draw another one of these shapes, again, you want to make sure your fill color is your ice cap color and your stroke color is that blue. So when we do another one of our elevations, it will have a stroke, and another one will have a stroke too. Again, you can play around with the thickness of the stroke until you get something that suits exactly your canvas size. Oh, and sneak preview for later on, the way we indicate what elevations in particular they are, we'd press T on our keyboard for the text tool, we'd write out the elevation we want, we'll give it this a same-ish blue color. Let's enlarge it a bit. So I'm holding shift, clicking and dragging, and put this here, rotate it so it's sitting kind of in the direction of the line. Fix this nonsense that's going on here. Quick tip here, if you go shift X, you flip your stroke and your fill color, and then if you do / you can get rid of whatever color is foremost here. So I'll do that and I'll get rid of the stroke, so I'm just left with a nice blue color. And then what we can do is, with our brush selected, with our pencil selected, we can just draw a nice box around this boyo, select our shape, get rid of the stroke, / and then command left bracket to drag it beneath it, and that is how we will show elevations later on. And we do the same for here, same for here. Again, this is only a rough proof of concept. You should take more time and deliberation than I'm doing here, but that's the general idea. So anyways, with that in mind, it is time-lapse time again. Alta Silverpoor writes, I was a little bummed out in episode 2. When you did the topographies, it was effectively a straight up hand-drawn by educated eye approach. I feel like this style amounts to get good, son. Unfortunately, that's something that's kind of hard to teach. It really is a case of just keep practicing and keep looking at maps and understand the processes that form the various coastlines. Now again, before people write comments, I appreciate that mine are very expedient, but again, I'm going for how to use the program as opposed to how to create the most perfect coastlines and mountains, etc. Blah Attacker writes, quick question based on your comment on computer-generated coastlines. How do you feel about programs designed specifically for terrain creation, like World Machine? Again, everything I'm going to say here is personal opinion. I don't want to be prescriptive and say that people must use certain programs. Whatever tools work for you are the correct tools. But for me, I derive great enjoyment from handcrafting the thing. The idea of a computer doing all the work and giving me a result is not a thing I am personally interested in, but again, if that's a thing that you are personally interested in, that is a-okay. And a lot of other commenters actually pointed out this idea of balance, that you can use computer generated stuff, be it like noise layers or straight up terrain generation, but try and balance that with your own artistic sensibilities and don't just accept everything the computer spits out. is my opinion. Shira117 writes, out of curiosity, how long did it take you in real time to do all the drawing that we're seeing happening in this video? So I can't remember for episode 2, but for this video I think it took about maybe 4 hours total, which, I mean, it is a long time, but like, you know, an hour or two every day, you'll get an entire master map done in excruciating detail in the space of a week. So it's not that bad. It is time consuming, but it's not terrible. Barcodum writes, my world's about 1.25 times the size of Earth. Will G-plates still be useful for this? Yes, absolutely. It doesn't matter what size planet you're working with, G-plates will still work. Think of the radius of the globe in G-plates not as the radius of the Earth, but as x, x being whatever you want it to be. Stoneworks Worldbuilding writes, what are your thoughts on mythological worldbuilding? It's a totally different style than what you seem to find enjoyable, but like Middle-earth doesn't take into account any plate tectonics or ocean currents. The entire thing is created by gods screwing with each other. So yeah, kind of this sort of hand-wavy approach doesn't bother me at all. I think it's really cool, and it adds like a backstory and a mythos to your setting, and that's great. I think it works best when you know that you're breaking the rules, like you know that mountains can't form like this, or you know that a certain biome can't be here, but you're going to do it anyways. I think that's cool, but using the a wizard did it thing to cover up the fact that you don't know how geography works is kind of, it doesn't work so well, I think anyways. Just my opinion, just my opinion. Gary Meany writes, this is a great video on the technical side of map making, but I've been wondering if you're planning on discussing the actual science of it more. Things like where to put wetlands, fjords, lagoons, deltas, etc. How the age of a mountain range affects its topography, the effect of post-glacial rebound on geography, where to put drainage basins, etc. Yes and no. No in the sense that the hardcore science stuff is for my regular videos. This map is not meant to be scientifically accurate. This is meant to be a demonstration of how to use Illustrator and how to do cartography, in the sense of like how to follow cartographic conventions. Like down the road, I'm going to go into like how to label maps. What are the conventions around text on maps? How to work with grids and graticules, etc. So that's more the focus of this series. That said, every so often I'll drop in a little one-liner and be like, I'm placing this ocean trench here because these plates are doing what they're doing. I may mention something about rivers, etc., but I'm not going for scientific realism. I'm going for how to use these apps and how to follow cartographic conventions. Adir Mugrabi writes, way too much work. I agree, it is a lot of work. But again, if this is a thing you're interested in, it'll be a thing that you'll want to sink many hours into. And if you're not, that's entirely cool. Der Perfect writes, your map is simply gorgeous. I would not have the patience. Can I recommend giving it a shot and listening to a podcast while you're doing it? It makes the hours go by much quicker. Can I recommend the Artifexian podcast for you for your project? Rec Jensen from my subreddit, links in the description, you should go check it out, mentions that Affinity Designer is another example of a vector-based program you might want to have a look at. It's not free, but it's way cheaper than Illustrator and doesn't come with a monthly subscription, and apparently you get free updates for life, which seems like a pretty cool deal. So that's a thing that you could look into. Inkscape, free. Affinity Designer, like mid-level. Adobe Illustrator, full on, you pay the massive Adobe tax to be able to use it. And those were some of the super pertinent comments from the last video. If you have any questions at all about this video, leave it in comments and I'll address them in the next video as always. Okay, so that is the land done and half of the sea done. I think I'm going to stop it there because the other half is pretty much the same, and I might do that off camera to save a little bit of time. Before I go, just a quick tour of what I'm doing and explaining why I'm doing it a little bit. Over here, this section here is my world's Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This is reminiscent of the actual Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This sort of structure here is based upon the idea of a divergent plate boundary with transform faults interlaced through it. More in my plate tectonics video on that. This section over here is very, very much based on what's happening around the Mariana Trench. So we have oceanic convergence going on. So the less dense oceanic crust is going to be forced downwards, as happens with the Mariana Trench, and this is my world's Mariana Trench. These here are kind of like a load of seamounts that can occur next to such a trench. Go check out the Pacific Ocean for these structures. Same thing to a lesser extent here, and the same thing will happen here. I just need to add in a couple of details. Everything else is just eyeballing atlases and spitballing and putting in shapes that I think look cool. And that is it. So as I said, I might finish this off camera, so next time there should be a fully completed map. Fingers crossed. Touch wood. Hope you enjoyed. Cue end screen. Good morning, Prep. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope you enjoy all the videos here on Artifexian. If you do, consider heading over to teespring.com/stores/Artifexian, or click on the shelf below this video to pick up some red hot nerd swag to help support this channel. Hoodies, t-shirts, stickers, flags, coffee cups, the whole shebang. Go check it out. If merch is not for you, consider heading over to patreon.com/Artifexian and support the show there. And at the same time, pick up loads of cool perks like access to the scripts, early access to videos, access to a monthly live stream, etc. Without this sort of direct support from you, the audience, Artifexian doesn't exist at all. So if you find Artifexian in any way valuable to you, consider those options. Massive shout out, as always, goes out to my top tier patrons: Alexander Roper, Andrew P Chehayl, Bob, John Hooyer, Ripta Pasay, and World Anvil. You all are amazing. Until next time, Edgar out.